Everybody, welcome to Guitar Soloing, here with Don, here at Real Brave, of course on Practice Pad, and streaming live here on Facebook that you can always grab whenever you want. Today we're going to be talking about a couple different things. Soloing improv, to go on last week's, or last topic, which is talking about the natural minor scale and the pentatonic scale. Soloing improv, riffs with the pentatonic, right? What's a riff? We'll talk about that in a little bit. The pentatonic minor scale, a natural minor scale with two notes omitted. Perhaps the most utilized scale in all of rock guitar playing. From early blues guitarists to modern-day hard rockers, the pentatonic scale is a staple. Notice how this pattern is actually a natural minor scale with the second and the sixth notes missing. If you don't know that, we'll cover that some other time. Many things can be done to spice up this scale. Extra notes to bend strings, hammer-ons, and numerous other techniques. But for now, work on becoming comfortable with the sound and sequence of these historically important 5 notes. Here's a comprehensive view of the pentatonic minor scale on the guitar. And you can see the top and the bottom here. One is one position, and on the bottom it's just you can play it all over the fretboard. I'm here with Don Albert, the guitarist extraordinaire, the person that I owe my life to, maybe, in the music sense. He didn't bring me into this world, but, you know, might as well.
Pressure, man.
A lot of pressure, but no, you're in good hands here. Don, take it away.
Okay, well, I'm just remembering back to those days, and I'm remembering when I was first starting on guitar, and I had figured out that, you know, soloing can be done, and it's not that hard if you have a scale to work out of. It's like training wheels in a sense. You can just kind of follow along the scale and play something, and it'll sound okay. And but I basically felt that there were 2 levels of soloing. One is not good enough, and the other one was, you know, didn't know what to call it, because all I noticed is everything I was playing didn't sound really good. It didn't sound professional. It didn't sound impressive to me. Definitely not to anybody else. So as I was trying to get a grip on that, and it took years before I started feeling like, oh, this might be good enough. And then eventually this is good enough. And then I don't care if it's good enough. I'm enjoying myself. Along that way, it would have been nice to know that there is a little bit of a stairway to that colloquial heaven, if I may. And the way to do that is to just understand that the very basic things that we use to get started on soloing are really the same things that we use when we're very proficient at soloing. And we start usually with the knowledge of a scale or two, because it's easier that way. We could certainly jump into the water and say, I'm only going to play notes as I hear them in my head before I do, the purist, P-U-R-I-S-T way. But most of us find out about the pentatonic scale and we're super excited because, whoa. And as guitarists we're listening to, doing riffs out of it, and we're like, oh yeah, that I can do that. So there's our pentatonic scale. And there's a more involved version of it on the bottom. We can eventually get very good, but even when we just start with those scales, we're finding notes that sound good while we're trying to play some sort of solo over some chords or some song. And they're not hard to find when we have this laid out for us. So I look at that and I say, well, you know, as long as I understand that the bottom one is the low E string, the bottom red note of the first diagram is the low E string, I can start on any fret I want. So I'm going to start on the 10th fret here. I'll start on this note, because that note is D. And I'm going to play this pattern. First finger, fourth finger, 3 frets higher, and then the next string, this one. And I can very easily get to know those notes. I might not play them quickly, but I'll be able to play them when I want to play them. So now, how do I find the notes that sound good out of that? Because each note doesn't sound equally good, and if I just play the notes, that doesn't sound good enough. That sounds horrible. And I'm thinking, no, it sounds like not just an amateur. It sounds like I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know what I was doing, but I needed something more than that. So let's say we're hearing the chord This I'm playing on the 10th fret because I'm presuming a key of D minor. Just because there's a lot of good songs that you learn early on in D minor. It's a really nice chord. So if you're playing a D minor chord, an open one here, at the first fret, there's a diagram of it. It should be, there it is. It's the, how do you battleship this? It's B2. Second column, second row, D minor. Really nice graphic. We got the open D string. You can just play that for yourself, even if you've been playing for 2 weeks. And here it is. And, you know, if you strum it a little bit, you've got Pink Floyd. Now, it takes a while to be able to go and then stop the chord like that, but you can do it, you know, or just play the chord. Say, how do I play something that sounds good over this out of D pentatonic? 10th fret, the pattern that we showed. And that sounds kind of good to begin with. Just those notes played straight. But I can't play them that fast yet because I'm just starting. Find the one that sounds the best with your D minor chord. Best to you at that moment. That first one, whoops. I shake it a little bit with vibrato. If I can't do vibrato, I just play it. Well, at least it sounds good. This one sounds good too. But the notes that are going to sound the most consonant, it's the music theory term for this, the least conflicting, and there are waveforms to show how this happens, but the ones that are most consonant are the root, which if the chord is D minor, the root is D, and this note is D, and the first note of your pentatonic scale is the root. The root, the fifth, which is actually the fourth note up of this scale, but we'll talk about why we call it the fifth later. That note, and then the octave, which is the same as the root. Do, 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 mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then there's a high one. In other words, all the D's in this scale. This note's a D, this note's a D, this note's a D. They're all roots. So if the chord is, and I play, whoops, I gotta get to D. Even without the vibrato, I could hammer it on. I could slide to it. And then that's Don Henley now, right? Just that one note, the root, sounds a bit authoritative. It sounds like I know what I'm doing. Even if I really don't, I just know this scale, and I know that these are the roots, and they're highlighted in color in the diagram. Here's the high one. So if you're hearing, you can slide to it. If I can't slide, just play it. Play it a few times. If I know how to bend from the previous note of the pentatonic scale, I can say, and it's such a solid note for that chord because it's the root. The chord is based on this note. Here it is. First note of a D minor scale, D. First bottom note of the chord if you're in root position, D. And anything I do with those 3 Ds in the pentatonic scale, those 3 roots, is going to sound, yeah, but I've already got a Neil Young solo going there, just playing the roots and hammering them like that. And I could get to the fifths. And I might find that when I go, that I like the way that one sounds. That's the third, but we don't even have to know that these are roots, thirds, and fifths. We can just play them and say which one sounds good when they're going. What if I say, that's the one I want to hear? Even without knowing it's the third. I go from there to there, and it's already starting to sound like something. That's playing this one and this one at the same time. You can accidentally start playing things that sound good And if you don't judge yourself, you just let that happen, the natural boredom of playing the same notes over and over again is going to get you to try other ones. And now we're exploring the scale and getting a feel for it. And then we start developing as a soloist, because now we're playing what we feel. Even if we're playing with the training wheels of a pentatonic scale and sticking to that one form, we're playing what we want to hear in our head in every element except that set of notes. That's the only thing that's prescribed for us. We're soloing. That's soloing. And that's just a one chord, one scale. And as soon as we're listening to what we're doing, we're on our way toward the highest levels of that, which is Eric Clapton. He'll take a pentatonic scale. You could listen to it for an hour, the way he plays it. And if we realize that once we're doing that, that we're actually on the road. It's not, this is not good enough and that's great. It's the same thing and just getting better and better at it. And that's the fundamental sense of using a pentatonic scale for soloing without anything fancy. I didn't have any riffs in there yet, just a tiny bit of pieces of riff. And there are those 3 red notes. Those are my roots. That's the super safe places. You know, it's rock climbing at first. So you find something that you can totally hang on to and trust. And then you reach for some other things. That was going to be the fifths and the thirds. And if you don't think about what they're called, it's just, which notes do I like? Which ones do I feel safe on? Which ones don't really sound right for this? And that's the core of everything from Larry Carlton's incredibly tasteful soloing to a great heavy metal solo to really any kind of soloing you can talk about. Riffs with pentatonic. So here is my D pentatonic. I can take any 2 notes of that, say the highest notes, the highest and the next to highest, ultimate note and the penultimate note. And I can just put both fingers on, play the first one, the high one, pull it off without the right hand. Get good at that by doing it a lot, very slowly, and eventually it becomes very, 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 very easy to do. It's called a trill. And just doing that once, that's the Eagles. Forget which song it is. One of these nights, the Eagles. Probably. I'm going to find out how wrong I am about that, but there's a riff. 2 notes. Do it on the next string, and I'm adding a little vibrato afterwards. Even if I don't. It's something. And eventually, I start shaking the note a little bit. Watching a million people do it, it starts to become subconscious. I do them fast in a row. I didn't pick all 4 notes. I said pick, pull off, pick, pull off. That's another riff. I'm not even going with the classic riffs. I'm just starting from a note. Any 2 notes, any 3 notes. Throw a bend in there, and there are the classic bending riffs. We have this as the beginner section in Practice Pad, bending riffs. You know, there's bending to unison, bending and hammering. There's this, bending that note and just pulling it back down. Yeah, there's bending by a half step. You can hear that difference. Whole step. Making sure it's right by comparing it to this note, which is the same note or unison. I can, there we go. G string note bend. That was poorly done. You heard the D string going. Unison note is that one. So it looks like this. Terrible angle. No. There we go. That turns into a riff. And if you don't just hit the unison note, but also hit the high note, which is the root, so this is the fifth and this is the root if you want the theory, You're bending to the same note and the root. So you can do that. That's a common, Buddy Holly, you know. Just combine it with the hammer thing and you have a whole beginning of a solo there. Play it together. A million songs come into your head when you hear that. How many, a bazillion songs have that? That's just bending to the unison. Bending and hammering. Bending and trilling. The Lenny Kravitz riff. We got a song out of a riff. One riff. But they're very easy to find in there. And then when you're playing over that D minor, what he does is right out of these riffs. And then when you break a string this way, almost every note of that is straight out of the pentatonic scale. But the first thing is a riff. Pull off. That's just going to back down to this note and back up. That could be a riff by itself. Bend. Pull off. Bend. To the root. Bend. It's classic now. This is an iconic phrase because of David Gilmour doing this. And when you're hearing that, you just think, what riff sounds good? And the rhythm of the song, if it's, that's, you want to hit the notes hard. Just hitting a note hard sounds good. That's right out of the guitar solo, so it's just the main notes, the root, pulling it off there. So that's a great example of a solo and an iconic one and a great one, just almost entirely made up of pentatonic riffs. All of them are doable because David Gilmour, first to admit, I'm not very fast as a guitar player. So very early in our progress, we can start playing around with David Gilmour and some other guitar players, even Clapton, building riffs into solos. It's not all of soloing, but it's a good way to get started and to be able to feel good about expressing ourselves with soloing. But of course, if we're in Clapton land with that's all nice pentatonic D. I'm going into a natural minor there, just to be fair, but that note's not in pentatonic. Pentatonic would say, natural minor would say. There you go, natural minor, right there, that one black note that's on the left, that's when you're playing it and you have to reach back a fret on the G string. And that's what he does there in Layla. Gilmour does it in the Pink Floyd song as well. So knowing that natural minor is involved with this, reach back there, back to where you were. That's the natural minor scale. It adds a little new doorway in your pentatonic soloing. You can suddenly use these other notes that are very important. They're just more complete. It's like only having a few Crayola crayons when it's a 5 crayon set, the pentatonic scale. Maybe 10 if you do the next octave or maybe a few octaves, but this is a 7 note scale, and those extra notes make it really wonderful. That's not even getting into the blues scale, but it's very basic stuff. This stuff's useful. However, Layla, while going, Layla, real easy, got me on my knees. D minor, B flat, C, back to D minor. Keeps going back to D minor. Very easy. That means everything is going to sound good, right? But then it goes to the verse. C sharp minor. What do you do when you get lonely? G sharp 7. Oh no. We need that cat song for Instagram. Oh no. Oh no. C sharp minor, G sharp 7, C sharp minor, C, D, E. Now it sounds like we're in the key of E. This goes like this. Sounds like C sharp minor, but then it's over. And then that's over. Just kind of still E. Little mini section of a 2-5-1 in E, if you want the theory on that. Then it goes A, back to the D minor. So for that little section, you're no longer in the safe confines of simplicity, where you just have a D minor and you can even ignore the B flat and C chords because it's going back to D minor every time. Now we're in another place, and it's C sharp minor, which doesn't just mean go and you're safe, because it's not going to stay there. But right away, if this is D minor, pentatonic, then this is C sharp minor. A half step lower, because C sharp is just a half step lower than D. So now, what do you do when you get lonely? It goes to that G sharp 7. Little extra theory knowledge will make you realize that doesn't mean you have to run to a G sharp 7 scale or arpeggio. You're still fine in C sharp minor, because look what it's doing. It's going and then here and then back. You can do a whole song that way. You wouldn't say that song is in 2 different keys. It's in C sharp minor, and it's going to the 5 chord of G sharp 7, which means you're safe right here in C sharp minor. But when it goes to that G sharp 7 and you go, you play that note from the pentatonic scale, the chord is going to go, which is that note. You're playing this note, chord's playing that note. You can get away with it. You're really artful, you can get away with it on purpose. That's Clapton level. But it's nice to know, and Clapton gloriously does this in White Room and a couple other songs, where he'll go to that major third. So here he is in C sharp minor, which means I go, that's the note in the scale, but it's a half step too low. Boy, if I've got good ear training at work, I'm going to know that I can just bend it. So here's your chord. Whoops. When it goes to that G sharp chord, if I play that and I do it, I bend into it, back on a root, home base is the root. Got a solo going there. Then he goes, I don't feel the need to go, with him there on each chord, but that's a lead in to E. E, major. We talked about taking a pentatonic scale, and if we start with our pinky, we can play it and call it a major pentatonic scale. So what if I put my pinky on E, 12th fret? So that means when it goes, there I am. Well, actually, that's where I was already. I was playing C sharp minor, which is the same scale. And music often works that way, because the writer of the song is feeling it in a key for whatever time he or she is doing so, and these other chords work in the context of that key, so that this one scale is now working over many of them. course, he's changing keys when he goes back to the chorus. He's going to D minor. But here he was in C sharp minor or E major, which is the same key. It's almost the same chord. So once he goes to, what do you do when you get lonely? We're in C sharp minor. We were in D minor. We're now 1/2 step lower. If I hit that note, or I need to know to go, if it's this chord. If I don't hear it, I'll probably just go, wow, the rest of the band is on that, and it'll just sound like a guitarist who doesn't have very good ears, but we want to develop those ears with ear training. And then when it goes, we don't have to move at all. Now that note is right. We wouldn't want to go there for the E major, make it augmented. So what does this all mean? The F sharp minor B is going to be the same thing. It means that if we have D pentatonic minor, we know where we are, know which notes we're going to maybe bend or play with to have a little bit of style in it, and we play along with that song, and then he goes to the verse and starts singing, what do you do when you get lonely? 1/2 step down. Find the notes that sound good in C sharp minor, which is E major, if we start with our pinky. And now we've got the same structure around us. It's the safety of a scale. If we know that we're in a scale, we don't have to worry about playing some embarrassingly bad note. And sometimes you really want that kind of certainty. You want to know where you are because, if you're recording or there's it's a big event, you don't want to, it's not time to just, mess around and see what happens. But if we have that sense of where we are, and we've started to get a sense of how to find our own feelings in it. It's an imposition to have a scale, and these are the notes you're allowed to play. You are allowed to break that. But even just finding which ones you like is personalizing it. And that makes it an actual solo. It's not just a person playing a pentatonic scale with a background that suits it. So play around with songs like, the Another Brick in the Wall is a good one, a little more rhythmic. Layla, D minor, 10th fret, C sharp minor, 9th fret. Start with your pinky when he goes to the E chord, maybe. Figure out which notes sound good, which notes you want to bend, which bending riffs sound good. Listen to what he's doing. This is the road to at least half of solo. The rest of it is when we're really not thinking of it analytically. We're just listening, and we have in our subconscious lots and lots of scales and pathways, but we're just finding them and arriving at them by instinct because we're hearing the music, and it happens at a subconscious level. And when that happens, and we make sure we're not distracted by an audience or a recording device or our own thinking, then it takes off into the level where it becomes magical, because you don't even realize really what you're doing because you're not doing it in the conscious level. You're doing a little bit more subconsciously. You can see that it's all you. These are all the things that you know how to play, but they seem to come out, just magically. Oh, there's a great example of it in some ways. So there you go, pentatonic scale, using it to become a soloist. There are some soloists who are so great at the pentatonic scale, they wouldn't even have to go outside of it. I've named a couple of them already. But it's a starting point. And getting to be able to play those riffs and do them with the songs like those two and many, many, many others, once we know the key, very quickly, we can start to feel like I'm soloing, and this is good enough.
Well done. I just found out, I was doing a session with Josh, that Stevie Wonder played drums on a lot of his records. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Drums, bass on the
Moog. A little off
Moog.
subject, but...
No, that guy's ridiculous.
ridiculous. But you too can become ridiculous as well. A lot of what Don was doing there was in the same position. And believe it or not, I'm going to put that up here. You can stay in the same position, meaning like on the same fret, learn these scales, and develop riffs. Riffs are just like a couple notes put together. That's a real simple version of what the definition is. But you develop riffs, and he was explaining really well. Like you can go, once it changes, once you understand this, okay, all you gotta do is shift just a little bit, understand that scale, right, at this level, right, we're just learning. And before you know it, you are putting together like a solo, and you can improvise over that. It just takes time. Just do the riff, do the scale over like a song. You know what key it's in. And those are 3 great examples, or 2 great examples of songs. You know what key they're in, and when to switch. And Don, thank you for that introduction, that window into that world.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Great. So we'll end it here. And this has been Guitar Soloing 2. Join us next time for some more intro into guitar soloing. Thank you.